Wow, I did not see that coming. Right now, I'm having to frankly pull out the phone and go, "Pronto, Ferrari." I don't even need to finish that sentence, do you? But that's my point. I need to give you maximum yap. Basically, the ex-Ferrari boss is headed for Audi. Now, this might seem like a dry subject at first glance, a former team principal moving from one team to another. Well, this is Mattia Binotto we're talking about here. Binotto turned out to be just yet another Ferrari team principal who wasn't given enough time to flourish because Binotto was all about medium to long-term plans, but that wasn't part of Ferrari's remit, and therefore he was cast aside at the end of 2022. But one thing that people tend to forget is that Mattia Binotto was not meant to be a team principal in training. He wasn't being destined for the top job at Maranello. He never intended to become the team principal. In fact, there's an interview going back several years by Goodwood.com of him discussing that it was never an ambition of his to become the boss of Scuderia Ferrari. I'll get to that interview later because it's quite pertinent. But the big news story right now is that he is coming back to Formula One, but not as a team principal. Okay, does this mean that he's going to be working alongside Andrea Seidel and Oliver Hoffman, two of the big name bods over at the Audi project for Formula One? Nope, he's replacing them both effectively. Andrea Seidel and Oliver Hoffman are gone. Oh, it must be really bad then. Well, you say that, but actually, I think this could be a good thing. Oh, come on, Lord, don't make me laugh. He's going to be their new team principal, isn't he? No! Mattia has been chosen as the one to help remodel their next phase of development, now that the initial phase of their acquiring the entirety of Sauber has been completed. It's already been going at breakneck speed since Andreas Seidel was talking about this before he was dropped, that they're constantly bringing in new people, removing new people, updating facilities, basically changing every single piece of furniture available, whilst Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu are busy trying to make do with what they've got, and what they've had right now has been utterly and disgracefully terrible. Well, I mean, it's not as bad as Logan Sargent at the moment, because apparently James Vowles isn't on speaking terms with the guy. It's absolutely ridiculous there. So what is Mattia Binotto exactly going to do? So this is from Audi's media center officially. Mattia Binotto will be Chief Operating and Chief Technical Officer in the leadership team of Sauber, with responsibility and accountability for the operative management and sporting success of the racing team. His hiring is part of the realignment of the control structure for the future Audi factory team. This realignment ensures the autonomy and independence of the Audi F1 project. Oh, I like that. In this context, Audi is reorganizing the management team for its F1 activities. Our main aim is to bring the entire Formula One project up to F1 speed, by means of clear management structures, defined responsibilities, reduced interfaces, and efficient decision-making processes. For this purpose, the team must be able to act independently and quickly, says the Audi CEO currently, Gernot Döllner. Well, this clears it up quite nicely, actually. Because over the last few years, since Audi announced their plans to join F1 in 2026, there's been many questions regarding the influence of the parent company, Audi, and whether or not it really wanted to commit to Formula One, especially since Porsche dropped out at the last minute when they were in discussion with Red Bull, so the VW group looked kind of shaky in wanting to be in F1 or not, almost as shaky as Honda. Also, since the initial buzz in 2022 when they painted an F1 show car in their colours and they said they were going to be ready for the challenge with the brand new regulations in 2026, we barely heard anything from Audi, other than people being hired and fired, moving on, people being wound down, moving to different departments. It just looked really boring and bland and not really exciting. I mean, okay, Andreas Seidel was brought in 2023 to lead the CEO of the Sauber Group. All we really heard from Audi was them steadily increasing their investment in the Sauber Group. It was very softly. It wasn't an immediate buyout. It was going to be a steady transition. Then there was the news of Oliver Hoffman being moved to the boss of the F1 initiative solely from Audi's side to work with Seidel as a sign of Audi's commitment to the operation. Okay, good. It silenced the critics, who thought that the car maker was about to ditch the company and sell off the shares. Now, if they had done that, regardless of the whole idea of Audi buying them out, because they did try and do that a few years ago, but they came out short because Sauber got cold feet at the last minute, it did then make sense that the whole title sponsor thing was stake. It was an insurance policy, a financial safety net in case Audi did abandon the project, so at least they would have some money coming in. Hiring Binotto and the motivation of Audi right now, it allows the F1 team to act without interference in the Audi board in terms of corporate meddling, and having that level of freedom to act in F1 is really saying something, since that's what Enzo Ferrari strived for with his team back in the 60s, so that the main car company under the control of Fiat couldn't rein him in, since the Ferrari F1 team was a great marketing chip for the automaker in terms of advertising. Clearly, Audi is allowing the F1 project to do what it needs to do in order to be successful. It's providing investment, it's providing personnel and the resources to be able to get back up to the top, But other than that, we are going to get to a situation where it's sort of similar to what's been going on at Mercedes, that, yeah, the board is somewhat influential, but they're not entirely in the business of trying to interfere with every single decision made. They kind of allow Toto to do his thing mostly, only really wading in when it comes to the really big decisions, like with Verstappen or with Hamilton, what have you. And by hiring Binotto and allowing him to do what he needs to do, this could be a really big game changer, because the most important thing that most people who, consume Formula One memery forget to realize is that Binotto is a technical guy. That's where Binotto's strength lie, and the act of putting him right in front of the media for all to see was a desperate and poor move on Ferrari's part. This is Ferrari and Mattia is Italian. How can you say no to that? It's Ferrari. He really didn't want the role, but he had no choice. Him. To be team principal was never an ambition. It's not something that in my time with Ferrari I was looking for. It was not the final goal. It was not an objective. But since I joined Ferrari, I've always had the opportunity to grow. It's something Ferrari has always offered me, at least, and something I've always appreciated. I can't say it was a surprise when I was told, because I felt the time was mature for it. I knew as well this decision would have been taken. The future of Ferrari, how to develop the team, and its organization would have been decided. So basically, he didn't really have a say in it. He got the job or he was off. What's important as Ferrari today, this is 2019, is looking at the future, that we are making the right decisions for the medium and long term, and being capable of managing the current situation with calmness, because the team needs to stay focused on what we are doing. And hopefully, there will be a time when things come back to us. All you need to know about this decision with Audi is that this is not meant to be a quick-fire solution to turn things around immediately. This is about the long game here. Yeah, you can easily point to the memes of Binotto and the clown show that has become synonymous with Ferrari under his tenure, but the man had 2 decades of experience working with the team in various capacities in the background, which specifically centered around the Ferrari engine. That is why Audi hired the guy. His expertise when it comes to make engines go vroom vroom very fast forward, innit? We all remember the shenanigans of the 2019 Ferrari, with its engine being one of the best on the grid, and then the FIA investigating it over oil burn. Ferrari claimed their innocence, the FIA had a quiet word with them instead of actually punishing them. But in a way, they kind of were punished anyway, because the 2020 season, the Ferrari engine was incredibly off, and they had their worst constructors' result in several decades. In fact, you could easily argue that that was probably an even worse punishment than them being disqualified, or losing points, or being fined. The indignity of 2020. Regardless, Binotto used his nous to push Ferrari ahead, the way he knew best, and it worked until they were caught out. Now, of course, Binotto is not going to be as cavalier with Audi, of course not, but he will be brought on board to help out with the engine Audi's developing and how to integrate it into the 2026 car. So before you get your clown wigs out of storage, or having used them for the current Ferrari team at the moment, Binotto is not going to be leading the team on the pit wall. He's going to be mainly leading them in the garage and in the business department side of things. He is their chief technical officer and chief operating officer. He is going to thrive in that department, because he thrived there at Ferrari. He was meant to be somebody behind the scenes, somebody you rarely saw on camera. I remember a picture of him during the 2000s with Michael showing him off and just saying, oh, this is Mattia, our engine guy, during the test sessions, and he looked really awkward. He was not meant to be in front of the camera, and that's where he thrives. And him being put out there in 2019, when Liberty Media were really starting to introduce team principles to the masses, that would have been a baptism of fire, as well as Ferrari thrusting him and throwing him into the lions. He really managed to hold his own, considering. However, the seismic shift is quite a shock regardless. Not just the appointment of the Italian, but also the ramifications of all the stuff around it, which is already happening, with Binotto's first act as Audi's lead aimed squarely at Ferrari and hiring all the engineering and technical employees he can get his hands on. And this is where Binotto could be deadly here. He could easily gut Ferrari of its lower level employees in the engineering department, and considering that 2026 is going to be relying heavily on how good the power unit is once again, what with the aerodynamic side of things and the ground effect side of things being heavily curtailed in terms of importance, this could be very majorly detrimental for Ferrari, because Ferrari right now are paying too much mind to Lewis Hamilton, Adrian Newey, securing the big names. They're not really paying so much attention to the people right down at the bottom of the pecking order, which Binotto would have been very close to, such as Enrico Galtier, for example, who is Ferrari's technical lead in power units. This could easily derail Ferrari's 2026 mission, and give Lewis Hamilton not necessarily one of the best cars on the grid. So really, watch this space. But needless to say, Mattia Binotto coming into the Sauber project right now, as it transitions into Audi, it's an incredibly shaky operation. And now looking back on it, considering that Sauber's really not figured at all, and they've been even worse than they were last year, at least Alfa Romeo last year scored some points. Their closest to getting points was Zhou at the beginning of the year, a couple of 11th places. What's become clear is that the leadership of Seidel and the work of James Key, who was mostly in charge of the brand new design concept of the car, is not working. And in a way, it could explain the drop-off from McLaren in 2022, at the beginning of the ground effect era and the team's transition into it. The same thing has obviously happened with Alfa Romeo and Sauber, and sure, the drop-off isn't as stark, going from 9th to 10th in the constructors, but it's kind of revealing that the same thing happened with McLaren, and that was shocking and unexpected. So maybe the departure of Seidel wasn't a decision seen to be a new challenge, it was a case of, I need to find a job. Now, you might be thinking I'm being cruel regarding Seidel and ignoring all of the work he put into restoring McLaren to a somewhat even keel back in 2019, and James Key was able to work his magic with the MCL35M somewhat. I get that. Those achievements are to be respected. But clearly something happened when moving to a brand new spec of F1 car, and clearly the Audi management was seeing that play out again with their team, so they weren't prepared to commit any more time to them. And quite frankly, this was the right time to do it, because if they left this any longer, the decision to change the management and bring somebody else in, it would have been too late. By New Year's Day 2025, development on the 2026 car can resume, and that's when you need to have a technical department in place, ready to go. Alright, well, what could this mean for the driver market then? Well, oh dear, poor Hülkenberg. He's been shafted again, because this is exactly what happened when he moved to Renault from Force India. He was promised the dream of working with Fred Vasseur, a really competent manager, especially in the GP2 days with ART, and then by the time Hulk gets to Renault, he's gone. So now the same thing's happened again. He was promised that he was going to be working with Andreas Seidel, who, by the way, was a driving factor of the commitment from Hulk to go to Sauber after now a resurgent Haas. What? And now he's not got that guy anymore. We've now got somebody, well, we don't know who right now. And Hülkenberg already had to deal with a bit of a difficult and tricky situation when he was at Sauber in 2013 when Monisha Keltenborn was the team principal. No disrespect to her, she did the best she could with an ailing Sauber, but clearly Hülkenberg was not exactly thrilled with what was going on behind the scenes. But in terms of the overall staff, he did have a good time, and he did provide them a really good time when it came to points, and he was almost getting a podium with them in Korea of 2013. I feel really bad for Hülkenberg, but it's clear right now the driver market for Sauber is not looking rosy, because they put everything into committing Carlos Sainz. Andreas Seidel's dream team would have been Carlos Sainz and Nico Hülkenberg, both people he has worked with in recent times over the last decade. And now, nobody wants to drive for Sauber. Nobody wants to drive for Audi other than Hülkenberg. Which is why the decision regarding the team principal is going to be crucial. They need to have Hülkenberg on side after this decision. And the person who's currently favoured to take up that job is indeed Mike Krack. What? Aston Martin's guy? You serious? Oh no, don't tell me that Papa Stroll's going to Sauber. No, don't worry, this isn't a silly choice, and in fact, it could see Krack flourish because you see, he's been at Sauber before, right at the start of his career. He joined in 2001 as a data engineer and became a major figure there, becoming Felipe Massa's chief engineer. When BMW came along, he became their de facto chief engineer, and he worked closely with Sebastian Vettel when he subbed in for Kubica when he injured himself after the horrifying crash in Canada. When you take a step back and ignore all of the stuff with Krack and Lance Stroll and all of that crazy stuff he's been saying in support of the Canadian driver, he's actually a really competent engineer. He led BMW Sauber to their best result in their history. That 1-2 in Canada the following year, that glorious wholesome story of Kubica rising from that crash and going on to win, Heidfeld coming second. BMW that year were looking like genuine contenders for not only the constructors, but also the World Championship. Kubica might have been challenging Lewis Hamilton and Felipe Massa for that title. That is until BMW committed to 2009 and completely gave up development, which is why Mike Krack left. He became disillusioned with the entire thing. And then, well, look what happened with all that commitment from BMW the following year, eh? They then quit the sport because they were that terrible. I mean, okay, 2009 might have been even worse, but at least they would have gone out on a high by giving Sauber a Constructors' Championship. We really need to see him again, free from the clutches of the Stroll empire. Because when he did leave BMW and went to work for Porsche for a while, he was invested in the 919 hybrid, and as we all know, that became a pretty powerful and potent machine in world endurance. So maybe if Audi is looking to give their new F1 team freedom to challenge for wins without corporate targets getting in the way, which is what happened with BMW, we could see a whole new side to the chap. Also, I wouldn't be surprised if Audi wants to try and get a scalp of BMW, saying, this was a person who was giving you results, but you completely ignored him, screwed him over, and now we got him. Or we are going to give him all the freedom he could possibly need. I think Mike Krack will be okay if he goes to Sauber. In fact, he might actually view going down to that team as some kind of weird and surreal promotion. So could Binotto and Krack be a combination of personalities and technical leads that might be able to secure Carlos Sainz finally? Be enough to tempt him back to the negotiating table? Well, it's hard to say, because not even Andreas Seidel was able to convince Carlos Sainz, so in regards to who's going to be partnering Nico Hülkenberg for 2025 and beyond, it's a bit of guesswork, honestly, because that initial list supplied by Blick, most of those names have been written off entirely because they've either signed up for their current teams or they've moved to other teams and ignored Audi. But maybe it could be a stay of execution for Valtteri Bottas if the Williams deal doesn't go through and Carlos Sainz gets that plum. Or Zhou Guanyu might get a stay of execution because he'll want to stay in F1 no matter what. He's even said that he doesn't mind being a reserve driver. Or it could be adding even more fuel to the fire about all the speculation regarding Mick Schumacher and Audi. This could be the realization of all the talks at Ferrari that Mattia had regarding the future of Mick Schumacher before both parties left the team. And this was brought to light to me by follower Min Huang, and that was an absolute save for the script. Now, Mattia and Mick did have a really good working relationship, and he had big hopes for the German driver. But then that all fell apart when Mick Schumacher made the decision to leave the Ferrari Driver Academy, since it was quite clear that he was not going to be getting a place anytime soon, and what with all the stuff happening at Haas, there was really no hope, so he decided to cut his losses and then moved to the Mercedes camp for maybe a slightly better chance at some success, since, Mercedes took in Michael Schumacher for his second stint in F1, so why not? Now, if Mick brokered the departure, then it would have disappointed Mattia, since he did have hopes for the German. But maybe those aspirations could be realised at another team, and Audi can look fondly at having 2 German drivers on board for their first year in F1, just like Mercedes did in 2010. Now, I know what you're going to say. I hear it all the time as a Mick Schumacher fan. Now, oh, he doesn't deserve a chance in F1. Oh, Gunther Steiner says he sucks. Well, I don't care, because where's Gunther Steiner now, eh? He's not in F1. And also, when you hear from Helmut Marko about Mick, it changes things entirely. I point you towards this piece from Helmut Marko regarding Mick, and if this guy says Schumacher was treated unfairly by Gunther, then you know things were bad at Haas. In fact, Marko saw no issue with Mick's junior skills, and the only reason he wasn't considered for the Red Bull junior team was because he wasn't available. And then when he did leave the Ferrari Driver Academy, he then quickly moved to Mercedes, so there was no time to take him. Marko even says that Alpine and Audi are seriously considering him, and that the only things about Mick that Helmut hears are good things, and that he deserves a chance in F1. Boom! The only bad thing he had to say about Mick is that he thought he was a little bit too nice, but sometimes being nice is a good thing, especially when it comes to adversity and working with people, and Alpine really like Mick Schumacher and what he's done for the World Endurance Championship. He's a really great motivator, the work commitment that they've seen is remarkable, and Toto is really keen to give him a seat in F1. I mean, obviously not a Mercedes team, which I think is double standards, but hey, I do have much more hope for Mick than I did a few months ago, because people are starting to realise that, oh hey, Mick's actually a really nice guy and really good to work with, and oh, actually, he's pretty quick too. Why were we sleeping on him? Maybe Steiner was wrong. Say what you will about Dr. Marko, but he does know a thing or two when it comes to junior talent. Whether Mick might excel at Sauber than Audi is too early to say right now, especially since the current Sauber guys is not kicking on. Well, I mean, it is kicking on, but only in terms of a sponsor name. Like the title of this video says, Audi had to do something. Pronto. And this is exactly the right thing to do. It might make it seem like there's complete and utter chaos going on behind the scenes at Audi, and there probably is. But at least now they've got a plan in action which seems logical, and they put Mattia in the right place. They didn't put him on the pit wall as the team principal, as many other teams probably would have done, considering that he had previous experience, it was at Ferrari. No, they recognise that Mattia is not somebody who's used to being in front of the camera all the time, and instead flourishes when nobody's paying attention to him. And right now, this could yield dividends and be the ultimate revenge of Mattia for Ferrari completely bailing on him, throwing him into the spotlight when he wasn't really supposed to, it was never his goal, and he now knows exactly who he needs to get to make Audi's engine project thrive. Just pay attention to this Audi engine, it could actually turn to be really good. So let this be a lesson to you, my friend, that if you're working with a group of people and you're the front person, that it's wise to respect every single person and get to know them, because you might need them in future. And one thing that needs to happen almost immediately is the appointment of a better team principal or representative than the one they've currently got. I'm sorry, Aluni Bravi, but you're just not a leader. He's a marketing guy who was placed on the pit wall to be Seidel's conduit when he busied himself getting things ready in the background. Because right now, Sauber do not have a strong figure on the ground to be able to deal with things as they happen in the pits and on the grid. Aluni Bravi is somebody who is really specializing in advertising and is having clearly far too much fun thinking of all of the crazy meme stuff they can do with the Stake and Kick brands, because their social media right now, they're trying to appeal to younger audiences and it's just coming off as cringy. I mean, Bottas is game for anything, I know he is, but, you know, there's a limit. But at least Audi's making the call right now, and they're at least trying to save Sauber instead of just allowing it to become an absolute laughingstock, and then they can take the credit when they become Audi, and then 2026 they're competent. They're doing something now, they're being proactive, and therefore, I do have a little bit more confidence in the project. And hey, a Hülkenberg-Schumacher lineup for 2026, or even next year? Oh, well, I'll look forward to that. So yeah, even though the jokes are resurfacing regarding Mattia, they are absolutely unnecessary, because we need to take a step back. When he came in 2019 to when he left in 2022, Ferrari looked like a better team. He survived the 2020 horror show, and if only that car was slightly more reliable, less fragile, Charles Leclerc could have taken that championship all the way to the end. And the F175 could have been in line for the Constructors' Championship. It was that close, it just wasn't there. And what we're seeing right now with Fred Vasseur and Ferrari, it might be a systemic issue, not necessarily at the foot of Mattia Binotto in terms of blame. Because I still reckon that even with Fred around in his calm head, Leclerc's own described nightmare may continue next year if Ferrari can't sort out their car woes. Something I discuss more of in this video here that you can go and watch right now. This Grandmaster Blan might be a really Grandmaster Blan.